All right, so just starting my live session, if you would call it that, for One Loose Sprocket, and I think this is the second one I've done. So kind of new at it a little bit, but what I'm going to do now is kind of work on this Magna. It's an older Magna, only has a 5-speed in the back, but definitely needs some work. And I'll just go ahead and do what I need to do. Just do it live, and we'll see how it goes. So. Obviously the chain is not the best. Definitely need some work there. And actually I think I might need my headphones because I'll probably pick it up from here. So yeah, chain's obviously rusted. I mean, would expect that's typically what happens. Does seem to work okay. I mean, it's not like overly rusted where it's so stiff it doesn't move. But I can see that some of the links are a little stiff too. So it's not definitely not the best. So, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and get some gloves on. And let's see what, like I said, just walk through kind of what I typically will do when I look at a bike, just to see what's necessary. It's an older bike because it has the center pull brakes, or sorry, the cantilever brakes. I always I confuse the two. So it does have cantilever brakes, which means it's probably from the mid-90s, probably, or something like that, or around the turn of the century. So that's one thing. Rusted, and again, it has a steel crank, which is pretty typical for some of the bikes that are lower end, not necessarily, this is not a mid-range or high-end bike. Obviously, this is just really something that can be used for, it has steel rims, not even alloy. So again, for the most part, this is definitely a budget bike. So we'll take a look at this. All right, so let's look at the front. And what I got here is 5-speed in the front, 5-speed in the back, 3 in the front. So it's a 15-speed. Again, the threaded fork, which is pretty typical. And it does have a suspension fork at the front, which is nice. But other than that, it doesn't seem to be necessarily a big problem. I'm just looking at this, has some rocks in the wheel. So the wheels are, the tires are definitely flat, but stiff brakes for the most part, and it does have some knockoff Dynagrip. I have no idea. I've never heard of Dynagrip shifter. So, well, let's look at that. A little bit of haze and dirt on the frame itself. So again, my trusty mineral spirits. Actually, this is a mixture of mineral spirits with WD-40, and and I think I put in. That's it. That's what I put in here. So just to see if I can take off a little bit of that haze on here, make it look a little bit better. It is taking it off slowly, so I mean it's doing okay. Usually, if I have problems like that, I will attack with maybe some alcohol. Something that's a more of a rubbing alcohol is really good. Isopropanol is good for this kind of stuff. I don't typically like going to acetone, although it does a really good job. The ketones are not necessarily the best way to clean something because it will attack the finish. And even though it is a budget bike, I'm not necessarily trying to destroy it, obviously. And any paint job is a paint job, regardless of how good or bad it is. It's still a paint job, and it helps to protect the steel frames. I mean, steel frames are always, they'll rust very quickly. So it's taking off a little bit. I'm getting a little of the junk off of here. I might get some alcohol here. Let's see how that works. Yeah, much better. Yeah, it's doing a much better job. So you can see it taking right off. So it's really dirt more than it is grease that's on it, because of the dirt. The dirt does not come off too well with the mineral spirits, because it's too it likes something that's more polar as a solvent, a polar solvent than a non-polar solvent. So yeah, much better. There we go. So I'll clean up some of the stuff here, try to get all the junk out. I mean, it already looks better. Just the visual aspects are maybe not the most important thing in a bike, but it definitely helps to see it look better. And there obviously I can see there's some pitting in the frame, and so rust is starting to build up underneath the finish, the paint finish, and that is going to, of course, impact the longevity of this bike. So looking good. I like that. Take off a little bit here. Yep, looking very good. The same thing. Definitely see some pitting along here, no doubt from chain strike. So a lot of that is causing some problems there. But other than that, it's not really that bad. It's an okay bike. And with a little bit of TLC, just a little bit of care, most any bike will last more than the time that most people would be around. I mean, really, some of these bikes are actually, the older bikes are actually more bulletproof than the new ones. So anyway, all right, well, it took a little bit off. So let's take a look at the chain here. I'm seeing that the rear derailleur, as always, the idler pulleys, for the most part, it's very typical. The idler pulleys don't have any grease on them. So we'll go ahead and put some, got my little Lucas oil. I like greasing my pulleys. I like greasing, obviously, the things that are important, like your head tube for the gooseneck. You know, obviously, you want to get your head set. You want to get your bottom bracket. Those definitely need grease. Yeah, inside, obviously, your hubs will require grease. But things like your idler pulleys, I will use grease at times, but I like to be a little bit stingy with the grease. Just enough to get it into the places where it needs it. And then for the chain, I rarely use grease at all because I don't like, well, me living in Texas, then it's pretty dry. And dry areas do not like to have wet lubricants. They're better off with dry lubricants. So I'll use this stuff here, which is called Chain Saver, and it's a Teflon based wax lubricant. And this stuff actually is really good. I like this a lot. And I use this on my own chains. I use it on pretty much any bike that I work on. I use on those chains because I find that it dries, and once it's dried, then it doesn't collect more dirt. As a matter of fact, you can run your fingers over it after maybe a couple weeks of riding, or within a certain amount of time, your fingers are still clean. In other words, it doesn't attract the dirt. Whereas if you're using grease, for the most part, that will accepts the dirt and stuff like that. The good thing is that you can use something like this, which is a wet lube, and I don't have the label on it right now, but this is a wet lube. And the wet lube actually will be better for wet conditions, meaning that it's better for when you have a lot of water in your environment, where maybe you're splashing a lot of mud and things like that, and therefore you want to actually repel the water, because the water doesn't get into the links of your chain, into your sprocket, different things like that you don't want to have, incorporate more stuff into that would be more dangerous, so to speak, for gears and the chain and the derailleurs and what have you. So again, most of the drivetrain is where you typically want to be very careful with what you're using, depending on the environment you're in. Okay, so again, the chain is definitely rusted, so I'm just going to hit it with some mineral spirits for now, and just let it soak. Oops, almost knocked myself over here. So just let it soak for a little bit. So as it skips, it's because of the stiff links. That's why it's skipping. So it feels a little bit stiff. I'm wondering if it's the bottom bracket. So what I'll do is take off this chain here and free up this. And yeah, so this is not good. And what I would probably have to do then is take off this this crank and check the bottom bracket. As always, and I actually enjoy this, but your older or cheaper bikes will have a square taper solid steel axle with the cages and bearings with the cups and the cones around it. And it's a very simple design, but it is so effective. So something like this, even though this is like almost like the bare minimum of a bike, what's necessary with a bunch of steel and all this stuff, steel luckily is not that it's not that bad. It actually does a pretty good job because it doesn't require a lot of maintenance necessarily, and to maintain it doesn't require a lot of work. So I think what I'll do is I'll take off this this crank here, and let's see if we can get that thing fixed. It usually doesn't take too long, so let me just go ahead and pop off the dust cap. So just take out this dust cap here. There we go. And it'll expose the retention nut, which is usually a 14 millimeter. So I have a special wrench that I use for that. I can dig it out of my stuff here. Okay. And take that off. Okay, so once we have this off here, then I want to come and get my extractor tool, which is a little guy like this. So this is your extractor tool. You see it has a large pin in the center with a thread on the outside, and it's threaded on the inside. And as you rotate it, then it will push down in the side as you rotate. And this is threaded into the inside of the crank, and then it pushes the axle through and pulls out your crank arm. So that's really what it's for. Okay. So again, just take this, and this should thread on without too much trouble. It didn't really look beat up or anything like that, so it looked good. And luckily, all this is right-handed, so it's right-hand threaded. Sometimes can be difficult to get on. Struggling a little bit. Oh, I think I got it. There we go. All right. So now my adjustable wrench, my big one. Take this. Put that on. Probably should put a little bit of solvent on there. There we go. Not gonna hurt it. So now that's on. Now we twist this on as well. I'll go right here. So it shouldn't be too difficult to take off. And if you feel that it's giving, always check to make sure that when you're taking this off, that you're not stripping the inside of the crank arm. That happens a lot. Luckily with the steel, I'm not too concerned about it, but with aluminum cranks, That's difficult to do. Very difficult. So you have to be a little bit careful about that so you don't strip those until it comes off like that. Okay? So again, right here you can see this here is what goes inside the crank arm itself. Let's take this, loosen this up a little bit. And then the pin is what goes down here and pushes out on the actual axle itself right here. So now that I have this out of the way, there's really nothing else I need to do with this at this point. I mean, obviously it's a little rusted. Teeth look pretty clean. They're not all chewed up or beat up or anything like that. It doesn't look like it's wobbly. It's out of true or anything like that. So I'm okay with that. So the next thing is a special tool that I have for bottom brackets in this thing, which has a slot here, and it's obviously I have used this thing for quite a few times. There's a slot here, and there's actually a piece on the other side, but this one I've used quite a bit. So I'm going to go back to my other one, which is a Park tool, and it's not this one. I have another one, this one. So this guy is also designed to take off this one here. Now, this one is going to rotate this way, so it's actually left-handed thread. And the reason why is because if this were to ever bind up, the idea is that as it binds up, it actually will rotate out and loosen up with the intent to not bind and lock on you and seize. And that's the reason why there's left-handed and right-handed threads on your cranks. Sometimes it is not important. It doesn't really make much difference. Looks like, for example, this retention nut. This can be left-handed, right-handed. Doesn't make any difference. It's just a nut because it's not in rotation. But something like this, where you have your bearings inside, you definitely want to give it an opportunity to. And let me just bring this a little bit closer so you get a little bit better shot. There we go. Bring this right up here. So now we can see a little better. Yeah, we can. Okay, so here now, what I can do now, even though this is free, the other crank arm should have fallen down because it's free. There shouldn't be anything stopping this thing from rotating down, but it is because it's stiff. So what I'm going to do now is take this right here, and I have a mallet that I just do this. Loosen it up, and then we'll take this off, and let me just loosen up the other one on the other side, and that it is actually where I use this guy. So not to spend too much time let me just rotate this around so you get a better view here. Still see it? Yep. Okay, cool. So there's a lock ring here, so this lock ring comes off, and this is right-handed, so this I can't do this way. Give it a little bit of try to loosen it up a little bit. Okay. Okay. So I probably should take off this other bolt and remove this crank arm as well. But since I'm a little bit lazy today, let's just see what we have in the inside. And let's see. Well, there you go. Why was it so stiff? Because it has no lubrication. It's completely gone. The bearings are dry as a bone. And I just recently did a video on this thing in Spanish called La Caja Pedalera, in which I described what happens when this thing is like this and you continue to work with it or continue to ride your bike. Luckily, this has not been ridden in several years from what I understand. So it didn't cause any damage. It just completely leaked out, and you can see all the dried grease here on this side. So I think what I will do now that I see it, I will go ahead and take this off. So let's take off the other crank arm, because I think I'm going to have to do a full rebuild on this thing now. But again, this is part of the reason why if I had not done this, then I would have assumed that everything was fine. And then as I turned it back over to the owner, they would have not been very happy because it would have started to deteriorate very, very quickly in a short amount of time too. So I'm just going to take this and just tighten this up here. Okay, this is actually much better than the other one, but tighten that up, and then take this and I will so just go like this. Same thing, it's the same concept, it's all right-handed threads. So now that I have it feeling a little bit loose, then I should be able to just push it out. And there we go. So this now is out. Okay. So I have the lock ring. I have the non-drive side cup. Okay, that's the cup here. I have the cage with the bearings in it as well. I have the axle. I have the other cage. And then I have the other piece in here still that I need to take out. So it should just come out. Might just give it a little more. Just do that like that. And I should be able to twist this out with my fingers. Almost. I can almost get it. All right, let's get this. About done. I'll tighter than I thought. See, it's catching in different spots. So, but almost there.
Hablé con Gerardo.
Estás en mi grabación. Y estoy en vivo. ¿No quieres estar en mi grabación? Okay. So now, after a little bit of a interlude there, I will look at, so basically this is, and again, these axles are almost indestructible. And when I did my other video, I used this one, and as you see, it's scored here. It pitted the inside. You can't see it too well, but it is actually pitted in here. But this was the one that I said, no, I'm not going to use this anymore. Rarely do I ever get any of the axles that are completely destroyed to the point where they can't be used. So I'm going to clean this up a little bit and just make sure that it does have a black finish, obviously, on the actual axle itself. And right where the bearings make contact with the axle, for the most part, that is where you lose some of the finish. But I'm looking here and I'm not seeing anything. There's nothing wrong on this side. Just clean this up here and let's see what we've got. So I take off all this junk here and make it look good. Yeah. So it was just dry grease. That's all it is here. You can see it right here. That's just dry grease, because I just wipe it off and it comes right off, no problems. So all right. So looking here, again, I'm looking at it here, and I do not see any scoring, no pitting, no scoring, or anything like that. So it looks like that this actually was able to. This is definitely salvageable. Looking at the insert and the cups. The bearing cups here, I'm not seeing a lot of damage here either. So let's just go ahead and just go ahead and Okay. Just take off some of the junk here. And clean that up. And looking here, same thing. So I'm not seeing anything in here that is just a little dirty. That's all. It's all. It's just a little dirty. And dried grease, obviously, that needs to be removed. So looks good. Looks good. All right, I'll just clean it off a little bit with this. And just confirm now. Yep, looks good. Looks good. So this one's okay. And I'm going to assume that this one is okay as well, but as always, I'm going to clean it up really good. Just confirm that it is. Look okay. There's no pitting or anything like that. All the old greases out of there, dirt, stuff like that. So now this looks pretty good. I'm liking this as well. I'm not seeing anything in here. Yeah. It's a little bit dirty. Okay. So now that the cups are clean, axle's clean, I have some solvent here, and I just drop the bearings in there a little bit. Give them a little squish, pull them around a little bit. Got a little bit of stuff here on the outside of the cages. So usually just a little bit of work with the fingers. Kind of cleans them up there so they don't get all nasty. Looks good. Bearings look good as well. I don't see any pitting. I don't see anything that's looking necessarily nasty. Like I say, it was just sitting there. It dried out. That's all it did. So there's really not a problem. And as I'm starting to think about it now, that the fact that I've actually seen what the bottom bracket looks like, I'm going to assume that the headset is also dried out, because again, with age and time, they just, even if you don't use them, the grease will slowly leak out. Living in Texas, obviously 100-degree weather all the time, especially during the summer. So it just causes it to dry out, and it does really nothing at that point. So this is very common. Like I say, I like doing this. I like actually cleaning and repacking bearings and stuff like that, because it makes me feel so much better about the fact that these will run again for quite some time without having issues maybe later on. And again, these cheaper bikes, strangely enough, even though they are cheaper, are easier to service than some of the higher end bikes, because higher end bikes typically, for the most part, use exotic metals and carbon fiber and things like that. And that necessarily isn't a good thing, because you do have the tendency then to cause catastrophic failure. Steel, even though it's heavy, is very forgiving, and you can work with steel until your heart's content, because it can be welded, it can be formed, it's a very malleable metal while still maintaining the strength necessary for a frame. So I mean, again, this is partly is my personal preference, not because I necessarily like to ride around on steel frame bikes, because I do like aluminum for the weight consideration, but as a budget bicycle is concerned, and somebody who maybe is not concerned about getting out on the road and trying to win triathlons and stuff like that, that's for other people, right? That's for the people that really do want to spend that kind of time on that kind of thing. So, all right, so as I've been talking here, I've been cleaning up some of these pieces and just making sure they look good. So I have the 2 retention nuts on the outside of the axle. I have obviously my ball bearings and the cages, and I have the 2 cups that go on either side here as well. So if I were to assemble this thing as it should be, then if say sans uh, uh, the crank, then I would put my this 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 is going to be the non-drive side. So I put the non-drive side on first. So that's that piece. So that's going to be on this side of the bottom bracket, which is basically the tube, the threaded tube right here. So it's going to be on this side. Okay, so this is the non-drive side. Sorry, my mistake. Non-drive side. So it's going to be like this. So this will be here. And then on the opposite side, obviously on the drive side, then I'll have the ball bearings with the cage. I'll have this left-handed thread, and I'll put the retention, the lock nut here on the side, and as well as the lock nut here. So this is really how it should look in the compressed view of what goes on inside that bottom bracket. Okay, so it'll actually be just like this. So I'll put it so you can see it from the bike's perspective. So this is the way it should sit. Okay, so let me go ahead and take everything apart again. I'll make sure that we have it cleaned on the inside of the bottom bracket, because typically, even though the grease kind of leaked out, it very well may be it's dirty in here, and actually it's not that bad. Probably because of the fact the grease kind of leaked out the outside and then actually going inside. The cool thing is that it's not even rusted. There's not even rust inside, because this was not left out in the rain. This just was garage kept for the most part. So I'll just go ahead and clean this up a little bit, and then we can now put it back together. So just clean it up. I love taking advantage of the opportunity when I can, to clean this up when the crank is off, because then you have access to all these components that typically are not cleaned very often. There is a little bit of rust, seeing a little bit of rust at the bottom here. Not a big deal, because I'm not thinking that this was caused by excessive wear and tear. It was much more probably just, like say, being garage kept for a while. Okay, so I've gotten most of the stuff out. I'm sure there's still some dirt in there, so I'm going to grab my wire brush. So I have my wire brush. So, oh, sorry, I'm going to get over the other right side here. So put it like that. There we go. Now I can see better. So with my wire brush, I just go in here, kind of clean it around. Okay, get the other side. Okay, so just to try to see if I can get rid of a little bit of the junk in there, I'm just going to clean it like this. All right, there we go. And I will know if I did a good job or not at cleaning this out, because I'll hear the grittiness as I start to thread it back on. So, Levi, I'm recording right now, okay? Right, I'll be back inside. All right, so let's go ahead then, and we will start with the drive side first. So we'll put that on first over here. Not too gritty, I like that. So, doesn't seem to be that bad. So let me go ahead and get my tub of grease, and let's grease these parts here so we can start to assemble everything. So just a little bit of grease on the outside of the thread here. So I want to have that. And then all right, so now that is going on. Not too bad. Again, not feeling the grittiness that's not there. That looks good. And let's put this here. It's extra grease on my fingers, so I'll get that over there. And let me now take this and okay. So, and this is sort of lefty tighty instead of instead of lefty loosey, lefty tighty. Okay. Okay, so now we have this here. Out here. Doesn't have to be unduly tight, but at the same time, I don't want it to be loose either. So that's really what it is. Okay, so now because I have the drive side in, okay, now the drive side's in. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start to grease my ball bearings and grab my axle. And I will go ahead and slip this on here. I'm going to grease the inside of the cup on the drive side just a little bit. Put a little bit. I don't like putting it against the bare metal. I mean, eventually it's going to get greased all the way around inside there, but I just like doing it this way. So now I put this in here, and of course I need my other bearing cage, and I want to make sure that I get enough grease into the spaces. I am usually pretty liberal with my grease when I start to do this because I do not want to have too much. I mean, I don't think there's really considered excess at any time, but this should be enough to allow it to not do what it just did, and that is to dry out. That's what I don't want it to do. So now we'll take the actual cup here, the bearing cup. We'll slide that on. This is a right hand thread. So I just want to get it started. Make sure I don't want to cross. I have cross-threaded these before, and that is not good. So now it goes on nice and smooth. No grittiness. Sounded pretty good. So we are looking really nice. Okay. So for the tricky part, this is really the only part that really, if you want to say is important in this whole process, is getting the right tension. So I want to make sure that this rotates very freely, but not too much that there's movement. I don't want to hear any clatter at all. There's just the slightest amount. So that's why you have this retention, this lock ring. The lock ring then, it will go on, and when you put this on, I usually like to put on just a tiny bit, just the slightest bit loose, because when this goes on, as you tighten down, it usually will tighten the actual cup by maybe a 1/16 of a turn, which of course is not much, but in as far as what we're talking about here, that has a lot of it moved like maybe 5 to 10 degrees. So again, and it's still turning. So either I have to do one of two things, and it's a little bit on the stiff side now, just a slight bit stiff now. So what I typically will do is grab my other one. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll loosen this up again a little bit, and then tighten this while holding that nut. So it's a bit of a trick, bit of an operation here, but if done right, there we go. Okay, and there we go. So it's nice smooth performance. No wobble, no wiggle. There's no wiggle at all. And the way you can tell is by putting this back on. And notice it now rotates all the way around. it drops the bottom dead center, because obviously at 6 o'clock position, that's where it's there's the least amount of weight. So, which is great. So let me go ahead and put the put the lock nut on here. And I will do the same thing for the other side. Oops, don't want to do it that way. Almost missed it. Okay, so put that on, and oh, before I do that, I forgot one thing. I gotta slide my chain over here. Okay. All right. So now, just get the nut started. Okay. And here's my test. Smooth as butter. And that's really what I want. So you can see there's the rotation here is just amazing. And that's why I really love the square taper axles. I love them because they are so easy to service. Yeah, they get dirty, obviously. We've established that. But at the same time, the ability to service thing took me what, maybe 10, 15 minutes maybe? So it's really not it's not a major overhaul. It's just a matter of saying, okay, what do I need to do? And obviously having the right tools is obviously important, but you could use some channel locks or maybe an adjustable wrench if you wanted to. You could take this stuff off. It's not impossible. It's just having the right tools does help out this whole process up quite a bit. And I have some pulley grabbers, and so I could with a pulley extractor if I needed to. But again, with the right tools, and again, they're on Amazon for like 10, 15 bucks for what I have there. That's the Park. What is this thing? Park Tool CWP-7. So there you go. CWP-7 crank. Well, I don't know what the W stands for, but I'm sure it's the crank removal tool or something like that. They always use that kind of thing anyway, the way that they say it. All right, so this is tightened down pretty tight here, and do the same thing over here. There we go. Just tighten this down. Okay, nice and tight. All right, so put the crank back on. So very smooth. Okay, so we fixed one problem that this bike had. And obviously the chain is still rusted, but it seems to not be skipping. So it obviously with a little bit of use, obviously it'll start to loosen up and stuff like that. The problem is, of course, chains they do rust, and the rust does eventually work itself into the pins and starts to wear it and causes chains to stretch and chains to break and things like that. But at least this way, we're getting to the point where it's better. It's better. Okay, so now that I finished that up, let's take a look at the front end and see what is up with the headset, which I assume is going to be a problem as well. So let's turn the bike around and let's see what we've got here. So it doesn't feel bad. It doesn't feel bad, but because of all this dry grease I see around here and around here, I'm going to assume that this also needs to be replaced and repacked. I'm going to also assume that the bearings are not bad. Okay, I think that they're just probably just a little bit, they probably just need a little work. Okay, so anyway, so for here, then of course with the threaded fork, and this is very common with the older bikes, for the most part, or the lower end bikes, you do have a you do need to take out the gooseneck, which is the stem. So you take out the stem, and there's this lock nut. Of course, same concept here, a lock nut. Then you have a threaded nut, and that threaded nut is the one that actually is the top of that's the cone for the headset. And then you have your, basically the rest of the cups and stuff like that. I'm seeing that it looks like somebody did paint this. They put the headset cups on and then painted it. That's what they did apparently. So I'm gonna have to be a little bit careful of how I do this thing. So I'm not gonna be able to pop the whole thing off like I typically would. But again, just cleaning the cups on the inside is usually sufficient. Okay? So let's go ahead and clean this up a little bit. And all right, just trying to get this up. Guess I'm not gonna be able to do that. All right, so okay, all right. So let's go ahead and clean this up. And for typically what I'll do is not remove everything. I like to come at this a little bit different. So what I'll do is take my 6mm, pretty sure there's a 6mm. Yep, 6mm. And you loosen up. Carefully. Try not to destroy anything here. There we go. All right. Over there. Okay. And let's go ahead and there we go. So now it's loosened up. So what this is the retention nut. There's an angle nut in the inside, which holds the stem, the gooseneck, onto the inside of the steer tube of the fork. And all I want to do now is just break that loose. So I loosen up a little bit, and one whack is all it needs, and then it comes out. So this is really all. I'm just loosening up this guy right here, this little angle nut. Because as you tighten it up, you can see it starts to slide, it offsets, and that's what holds it in place inside the steer tube. Okay, but I don't need that. That's not what I need. What I need is this here. So let me go ahead and clean this out a little bit, because you can see there's a little bit of rust, which is very normal. And now I want to take my this and loosen that up. Usually these are very easy to take apart. They are not difficult. So what I'll do here is it has two retention nuts, and then, or spacer nuts I should say. And then from there I will take off all right. So now I'm going to carefully remove this one as well. And this whole thing should drop down. I have to be careful so I don't want to rip turn any of the break any of the brake levers, shifters, or anything like that. So carefully remove this. Okay, just about there. Okay, and there we go. All right. So, keep it right like that. Okay. And lo and behold, we're seeing the same thing that we saw with the headset, or sorry, with the bottom bracket, is that all the greases dry out. I mean, that's It's all there. You see, it's kind of caked on the inside. So let's take the crown, and here's the bottom one. And as you can see, it is all dry as well. Nothing there. So I'm just going to keep these in order because I do like to put them back in order for the most part, at least for the headset. They're at times they can be positioned specifically for either top, upper or lower. Okay, so now that I have this, let's clean up a little of this junk here. And now we have this out. Okay, so let's take a look at these cups here. And yeah, it doesn't look bad. Again, they painted it, and again, the right where the bearings go round is where it's all the paint's been taken off. So not a big deal. Crown race, just look at the crown race here. And the crown race is looking good as well. Oh, beautiful. Yeah, very nice. Yeah, very clean, very clean. Okay, awesome. So that looks good. So now, these are easy to fix, very easy, because there's not really a lot to do other than just, like I say, clean up all your stuff. Let me do my favorites. Drop the clean this up here and get the ball bearings looking pretty nice here. The cage. I mean, this is actually pretty clean to begin with. I mean, it's had almost nothing at all. But again, there's no indication. There you go, nice and clean. I mean, just mineral spirits is very, very good for as a solvent. And if you notice, they look the same. They look the same. I was gonna say that one might be a little bit larger than the other. That's why you have to be a little bit careful with your headsets because they can be situated for either top or bottom at times. Not always, but they can be. All right, so there's the top one. Top one has a little bit of haze on it. Is it going to affect the performance? No, it's not, but it does look good enough to be used. Okay, so now that we have this, and this is the top, so let's put the upper here. I did check the top race here, and let's just kind of clean this around here. I'm sure this is fine because it's not. I can see that it's not been used that much. Nobody was doing jumps on this bike. That's another thing that you can tell if a bike has been really abused is because if there's pitting on your headset, it's usually not due to lack of maintenance. It's used to people jumping on their bikes. And what it does is it causes the compression, and it's usually the top that is more than the bottom, but it causes a compression and will actually drive the ball bearings, which are actually slightly harder. They shouldn't be. They should be exactly the same, but there's usually the ball bearings will be driven into either the cup or the race. And what it does then, it causes it to pit. Call it pitting or pinging, they also call it. And so when you rotate the wheel, then it actually will skip. And usually, if you rotate it back to where it's front center, so that the wheel's facing straight forward, it actually will move into place, and it's almost like it's falling into a groove because that's exactly what it's doing. Because when you jump and you land, and you're usually landing with your front wheel forward, so it actually drills almost like divots into either the cup or the race or both, and then it rotates back into that position and stops. But then when you try to move your handlebars, it can skip or chatter a little bit because it's trying to overcome that divot or the pitting that's in that in the head race into the headset. So anyway, so let's get now that I have this cleaned up, and as you can see, it looks very clean, no issues whatsoever here. And of course, we'll do the same thing we just did for the bottom bracket. We'll just go ahead and put some liberal grease up in here in the cup for the bottom of the headset and for the top. So both upper and lower. And then because of the fact that it is easier to put this and let gravity do its thing, I will actually put the grease on the top and put it right in there. And then for the one on the bottom, I'll do the exact same thing. And we'll go ahead and just get enough grease in there. then I'll put this right back on the crown race. And now it should be there. Okay, cool. So I have a little bit left over, so I want to get that onto the cone nut here. And I think I've got that. I think I'm looking pretty good. Okay, so now what I will do is just take this right back up, and I have to make sure I put it in the right location because this is going to be on the outside. And I'll just put this right here. Greasy fingers aren't the best for doing this type of stuff. But I have to be very careful not to strip anything or cross thread. So you actually go backwards first, and then once it starts to connect, then you let it go in. So there we go. All right, so now it's on there. Get my fingers cleaned up a little bit. All right. Okay, so take that off. All right, so now we can go and attack this thing full force. Make sure this is okay. Yep, that's good. All right, cool. Don't have to take this back off again. All right, so slide this back up into there, right, and again, the same thing. I bring this down until it is tight, not too tight, and I can feel when it starts to grab the bearings, and I just let that go, and I should be able to have a nice smooth movement. And now with this one, it's not this way, it's this way, so I want to make sure that there's no play this way. I do. So I take the fork and I just do this. And I don't feel any movement of the fork as it doesn't want to rotate out like this. It's not rocking at all. So that's good. So let's put the spacer rings, spacer nuts back in here, washers. And let's do this one. So this goes in here. There's a little key in the back, so I have to make sure I line it up, right? There's one. And here's the other one. And then once I have that, I can go ahead and put the lock nut back on. Actually, I want to put, I should put some little grease on here too. Not a bad idea. So not too much, just a little bit to keep it from. Okay, so. And again, the nice thing is that this usually does not rotate with because the washers in between helps to keep it so it doesn't rotate. Don't necessarily have that same ability with the bottom bracket. So I should now just be able to tighten this up. Not too tight because again, I don't need it overly tight. It's just a lock ring. It's just or a lock nut just to be able to hold it in place. But once I have that, now I can take this back and put it back in here. Slide that back in, right about the same spot. Try to line this up, eyeball it a little bit here. I'm not going to be able to do a good job at this, just something. And then it's just a matter of tightening this up again. So So, as the last piece of this, at least, I just want to take the bike off. Put it down. straddle the bike and just want to tighten this, straighten this out a little bit. Okay, that should be good. All right. Right out there. Okay. So let's get this back up on the rack. Let's see what else we have. Okay. So, feels good. Feels good. So the two major bike rotation locations, obviously the bottom bracket and the headset, are now taken care of. For the most part, sometimes your wheels, your hubs can be, they can have problems. Not a common thing to have happen though, not very common. So what I want to do now is just check to see if the tires are holding air, because I know that they've been there for a while. It could just be that they're not working because they just lost air. So what we'll do is just pump them up and see what happens. So try to keep your valve as perpendicular as possible to the rim, pointing directly to the hub. And just turn this around a bit. Not hearing anything, so that sounds good. All right, let's try the front one. Same thing. All right. So only time will tell whether my tires actually will be able to hold air. Sometimes they have a pinhole leak where it's just enough that it looks and you're like, oh, this is awesome. Next day you come back in the morning and they're all flat. Never know. So put a little air in there. The next thing I would do then as part of this bike overhaul, if you want to call that, is kind of clean up. There's a little bit of dirt and grease here on the fork. So just clean that up a little bit. Just kind of get the chrome to shine a little bit more. Again, I just the dirty rag. I don't necessarily need to have it spick and span. Just get some of the junk off it. I do need to take a look and see if the fork is actually compressing the way it should. So let me, I was thinking off again. Why not? All right. Now we have the tires pumped up. Oh yeah. Okay. Yep. Definitely some spring in the fork, which is great. So that's not a problem. Okay. So with that, now we can start checking the derailleurs and making sure it's shifting as expected. And seems a little stiff. So let's go ahead and hit it with some mineral spirits to kind of loosen up some of the, and just start working it. So usually what I'll do is just start. So drop down to the lowest gear now, but it's loose, quite loose still. So not typically what you want. So what I'll do is normally I will take my just pull up the slack. Okay, and then tighten it back up. Okay, so let's continue. Okay, so now I should be able to, oops, still a bit loose. Didn't get it. All right, so when I have a problem like that, I usually will grab my pliers, pull it tight. There we go. All right, now it's tight. Oh, that was fine. Hang on a second, maybe I missed it. Try that again. Okay, so let's see what we got. Okay. Since it's only 5 speeds in the back, lots of leeway with respect to the alignment for the rear derailleur. So, still pretty loose. I don't like that. So I wonder if it's really stiff. So it seems like there might be some rust in either the guide. There doesn't seem to be a problem here at the rear derailleur. So it's probably here. So a way that you can do this is by actually taking this up to the top. Yeah, this is tight, definitely tight. Okay, so with a little bit of tension, get it up there. And then what I will do is actually loosen it up and take this off. Is this through? No, not through. Okay, this is also not through. Okay, so usually they'll have slots in these in the bosses that will allow you to slide it out. Unfortunately, this doesn't have that, so I'm just going to have to play with it. So if I don't have that capability, then let's just do this. I'll take this off completely. Okay. So now I can at least loosen this up. And it feels really stiff here. Really stiff. So I'm going to assume that there's a little bit of corrosion here. It does look like it's that way. So my quick remedy for corroded cables is a little bit of steel wool and just get rid of some of the junk. Yeah. It's coming out. I'm getting rust actually falling out from within the guide. So obviously not good, not good. Okay, so now we're going to take this here, and as always, I've got my trusty grease, and I do like to grease these because, of course, it's all closed up. So usually it's smart to put some grease in here. Okay, usually. Okay, so now, same thing here. This looks really clean. I don't see any problems there. And this doesn't look too bad. It looks like it was just there at the back. So if that's the case, then let's try this now. And I'll put this back in here. Okay. And let's try it. So it's going to drop back down all the way to the bottom. And I need to take this and put this back on here. Okay, just tighten it up, see what we got. Okay, so grab my pliers and just tighten this up here. Make it rather tight. Okay, so now let's try this. Okay. Okay, so it wants to go just a little bit too loose, for my liking. Okay. Tighter, yeah. Let's see what we got. Okay, so it's off just like a little bit, but that's why you have a little adjusting screw in the back here. This is an adjusting barrel, and you can now adjust it until it falls into place, and then when you start to drop it back down, it should drop down as well. So it's a little bit off. There we go. Okay. Lost my my little cable end. All right. So I can put another one on there. Mix all my junk here. Okay. Let's take this, put this back on. Okay. Let's see what we got now. Close, close, very close. There's a little bit of, just a slight amount of, just slightly loose. So we'll just tighten that up a little bit more. Okay. Much better, much better. Still a little bit, I think it's a little bit stiff in the rear derailleur because I'm not getting it to drop down as quickly as it was going up. It is, you can see it does want to drop down, but it's really taking its time. So again, just exercising this rear derailleur because it's been so long that this bike has been used, then it just needs time. Just going back and forth, just cycling through upper gear, lower gear, it's all about the same. Okay. All right, so now that we've done the rear derailleur, last thing to do is pretty much the front derailleur. So to look at that one then, since it's on the lowest gear right now, we'll see what happens. This does not have indexing that I can tell. So it's just a matter of, stiff as well. Stiff. Okay, so do a little bit of a squirt here with my mineral spirits. Okay, so it's dropping down to the lowest gear. Let's take it up to the highest gear now. Just about there. I think I'm at the top now. So it needs a little bit more space on the limit screws. The limit screws are just a little bit too close. So let's go and let's see which one is which. Okay, so this one is the one that I need to loosen up a little bit. And it's grabbing. Just doesn't want to jump up to the highest gear. So if that's the case, looks like we reached the limit of what the, oh, there we go. It made it finally. Okay, so looks good. not too bad. I think it's looking pretty good. It's not chattering. Seems to be okay. Doesn't seem like this cable doesn't seem to be as bad as the other one was. The back cable on the rear derailleur was much worse. But this doesn't seem to be that bad. So it looks like it's good. Not overly, really not that much of a problem here. So it looks good. I think that this bike is pretty much done as far as me reviewing what was needed to be done. Of course, let me just recap. So the first thing I noticed, of course, was that chain, as always, chains are always rusty. They're always rusty. They just ubiquitous. Rusty chain with a bike is always there. So I did kind of clean it up a little bit. Some of those links that were kind of a little bit stiff now are working okay. It's still rusty though. It's still dirty. So I do want to clean the chain again and put some nice lubricant on it. Again, because I'm in Texas, lubrication I would be using would be a dry lubricant, as I was mentioning. So the lubrication is going to be this guy. Okay. So this is stuff, actually you can buy this at Walmart. I'm not trying to promote Walmart. I'm not even trying to promote this stuff. I'm just saying that this is the stuff I use because I like it a lot. So it has Teflon in it. It has ceramic technology, non-stick, blah, blah, blah. So there's a bunch of stuff that they say it has in it. But the key is wax-based lubricant. That's the key. You want the wax because it's not a wet lubricant. It actually will work for, it's not maybe as effective as grease would be maybe in the long run. But again, you just have to continually apply. When you start to hear the squeaks, then you put the lubricant on there and just with a nice dry rag or something like that, just wipe off the excess. Don't leave too much on there because it can cake just like grease would. So you don't want it caking because then it does the exact opposite of what you want it to do. Then it will start to attract the grease or the dirt and stuff like that because there's too much. All you want to do is get into those pins, into the little nooks and crannies inside those links to allow it to rotate without any problems. You want it to be able to move from one sprocket to the other. So that's what the intent of the lubrication is for your chain. With the rust on it, it does absolutely, it's a huge no-no to have the rust still there. Again, I will have to think about what I'm going to do about getting all the rust off of it, but at least this is something that is still pending. We did the bottom bracket. We cleaned that up completely, rebuilt it. The bottom bracket now works great. It rotates fantastic now. Headset also completely fixed now. It rotates just as I would expect it to rotate. Tires seem to be holding air, supposedly. Mostly have never a while. I didn't do anything with the brakes. Maybe I should look at those. Brake pads aren't looking the best, but I will take it out for a test ride and see how it handles the braking. If its brakes okay, I'm not too concerned about that. If it just simply is not doing its job, meaning that the rubber of those brake pads it's so old that it's actually, I mean, it's harder than a rock. I mean, basically when it gets that bad, yeah, then there's usually, you probably have to replace them. But again, we'll see. I'll take a look at that. We also, of course, we cleaned the rear derailleur, got that working good. Aligned it again, made sure that it was running as expected. Shifters seem to be okay now. They're not fantastic. Again, we're talking a budget bike, and this budget bike is obviously at least 20 years old, maybe 25 years old. I have no idea, but it's a budget bike, so I'm not expecting it to run fantastic like even a mid-range bike. This is really, it's a budget bike. So, but other than that, I'm not seeing anything jumping out of me as being a huge mechanical issue. Now, their aesthetics, the rims are steel. Steel rims are, I mean, that's almost unheard of nowadays. Everybody has alloy rims, at least, or possibly carbon fiber. These have the steel, heavy, and rusted too. So there's rust on these rims, and these are chromed, which is obviously to help reduce the accumulation of rust. But this bike is just nah. So again, definitely want to maybe take some steel wool. So what I use is I'll use a quadruple aught steel wool, and I just come in here and I just start to buff this thing a little bit. It's not, strangely enough, chrome is harder than steel. This will not scratch the steel unless you go scratch the chrome, unless you go crazy. That's why I use a quadruple aught, which is the finest steel wool you can find. because that way it just works off the blemishes and the dirt that's on top. That's really all you do. Okay, so just a little bit of here, and especially I would do it on the brake surfaces so it doesn't cause problems cause undue wear on the actual brake pads themselves, because you have a bunch of junk on your bike hasn't been used for a while. Hey, with anything, right? It accumulates stuff. So that would be one thing I would be doing with this bike. What else? Other than that, it seems to be okay. Tires are holding pressure, so this one, this is actually, I think it's losing pressure. The front tire seems to be losing a little bit of pressure. So I will check that again. Maybe there's a pinhole leak in there. Something needs to be repaired. Back one seems to be okay. It's holding its pressure. Again, the brakes, because these are cantilever brakes, not common anymore. Most every mountain bike has either V brakes or disc brakes or something like that. But a very ingenious design, absolutely awesome, because at the end of the day, you only need brakes that cause you to stop. That's all you need. Disc brakes are not necessarily better than any other type of brake. Caliper, V brakes, cantilever, center pull, there's several other types of brakes too. That's not the critical thing. The critical thing is that you can stop your bike in a safe manner, obviously. So obviously if your bike gets wet, well, if you have rim brakes, as they call them, if you have rim brakes, those may take some time to stop because it has to get the water off the rim before you do that. And in that situation, disc brakes are actually better, because you're not braking on the rim that usually gets wet. The brake rotor can get wet, but it's usually cleaned off rather quickly. Now, I'm not going to go into this big discussion about what situation would require that. But again, since most people are not bike racers, they're not downhill, they're not enduros or anything like that. All they're interested in saying, I want to be able to stop my bike, and it doesn't throw me off the bike if I do an endo, or like I don't want to do an endo. I just want to be able to stop my bike in a safe, efficient manner. So that's it. Okay, enough said about that. So other than that, looks good. So this bike is done, and I think I'm going to end this live session. If you have any comments or questions, obviously get in contact with me. Send me a note, subscribe, leave a comment on this live session as well, and I will respond back when I am able to. And thanks for watching. For those that stuck around, I appreciate it.